Hello, my name is Sumit Madhan, and I am working as a CEO and a partner consultant with Agilmania. I'm also a professional Scrum trainer with Scrum.org, and I'm here to create a video series on AI-driven product ownership. It's all about how AI can help product owners in their product management journey. So the agenda for this particular session is going to be I will take you around the history behind Scrum and Agile. We will talk about the project versus product and also the project mindset versus product mindset. We'll talk about product management. We'll also talk about the product strategy. That's where we'll understand how we get a product idea. Then we will talk about the product vision and product goals, stakeholder and risk identification. Then we'll talk about the persona and understanding the value for a persona, and then how we can connect the product goals with the persona and its values that will help us drive the product requirements. And we are actually going to use impact mapping for that. And then we'll talk about Scrum framework introduction. That's where we'll talk about where Scrum is applicable, what are the values and principles behind Scrum. Then we'll take a deeper dive into Scrum to understand the Scrum framework. Then we'll also understand how a product owner manages the product backlog. That's where we'll talk about requirements management in Scrum. Then also talk about estimation and forecasting. And in the last, we'll talk about the product and how product owner maximizes the value of a product. Now, to start with, let's start with the history behind Agile and Scrum. Now, Scrum as a concept was introduced in year 1986 in an article, The New Product Development Game. This article, or I could say the white paper, was developed by Takeuchi and Nonaka, and they presented, or they rather mentioned that there's a need for uncovering a new ways to develop new products in a digital world. Because the digital world was evolving, and when you are actually dealing with the evolving nature of any product, or I would say any industry, then the plan-driven methodology or approach might not work, and you need to have an adaptive approach. That's what it was mentioned in this particular article, and the first time they introduced Scrum way of working for adaptive product development approach. And the word Scrum was picked up from a game rugby, which is more around passing the ball to your teammates to win the game. Now, over a period of time, a lot of people started developing or they started working towards the adaptive approach. And in year 1993, Jeff Sutherland and Ken Schwaber, they co-created a structure for software development, or rather I would say structure for adaptive software development. And they named the structure as Scrum. In 1995, during a conference, first time they introduced Scrum to the audience. During this conference, a lot of other consortium were also available and, or I would say rather present, and they presented other ways of developing software like extreme programming practices. One consortium presented DSDM, Crystal, and quite a few. Post this conference, all of these realized that all of them, they were trying to do the same thing, which is uncovering the new ways to develop new products. So they thought, why can't we come together and create something for the software industry? That is where in the year 2001, 17 people, they came together to co-create a structure, or I would say framework or practices for the software development. But after spending 3 days, they concluded a certain set of values and principles for adaptive software development. And they agreed on 4 values and 12 principles, which they manifested in a manifesto for agile software development. Now, this particular manifesto is freely available over the internet. If you want, you can go and read about that. Just need to go to this particular website, which is agilemanifesto.org. And the core values they talk about is individual and interactions, working software, customer collaboration, and responding to change. 17 people who were involved in this manifesto. They're the 17 people, the co-creator of Scrum, the Mr. Ken and Jeff Sutherland, and the principles, 12 principles are here. Now, knowingly, unknowingly, whenever somebody asks that, okay, what is Agile and Scrum, we end up talking about these values and principles only. We talk about iterative and incremental development, collaboration, empowerment, and emergent designs. All these things are nothing but the principles behind Agile software development. Now, if you come over here we talk about 4 values. Now, apart from that, nothing else is mentioned on this website. Now, if somebody asks us that to define what is Agile, so we can define Agile as a set of 4 values and 12 principles, using which one can define the ways of work which will help solve business problems, or rather create business opportunities. Now, Agile is nothing but a set of 4 values principles using which one can define a way of work that will help you to solve your business problems. Now, this way of work or this way of work could be your processes. This way of work could be your practices. And this way of work could be the frameworks. Now, over a period of time, a lot of process, practices, and framework has evolved. You can use them, or otherwise you can come up with your own processes, practices, and structures or frameworks that can help you to solve your business problem. Now, over a period of time, the processes, practices, framework which has evolved, that includes your lean processes, Six Sigma, meta structures like Kanban, or there could be more. Practices like extreme programming practices, DevOps practices, the team level framework, Scrum, and there are some scaling frameworks like Maxis, large scale Scrum, Spotify scaling model, Scaled Agile framework, Scrum at scale, and there could be more. Now, why these are called as frameworks? We are saying Agile is a collection of values and principles that help you to define your way of work to solve your business problem. It often gets equated as a methodology. But we never say Agile is a framework. We always say Scrum is a framework. Now, why Scrum is called as a framework and why Agile is not a framework? So let's have a quick understanding of that. Now, what is called as framework? The framework definition says something that provides you a structure which is governed by a certain set of rules and guidelines within which people develop or use practices to deliver a value. That qualifies the definition of a framework. Now, for example, let's understand with a game. Consider the game football. Now, if you look at the game is nothing but a framework. Why? Because this game gives a structure to play the game. So as a structure, you need to have a field, you need to have a team, captain, goalkeeper, team manager, team coach, or there could be more also. And in order to facilitate the game, we are having a referee. And then to play the game, some rules are defined. Rules like the dimension of the field. It's a rule. 90 minutes of the game, rule. 45 minutes, 45 minutes with the halftime rule. You cannot touch a ball with the hand rule. You cannot hit somebody intentionally rules. So there are rules defined. But how the players are actually going to play the game, there's no methodology defined. They will actually plan and they will adapt on the field. They will use the practices they have developed over a period of time, and the ultimate goal is to win. That's how it is called as framework. Similarly, Scrum being a framework provides a structure. Structure which consists of 15 elements in total, and each of this element serves a purpose in the framework. And these elements are 3 roles, accountabilities, we can say, because each role serves accountability. 3 artifacts. The purpose of artifacts is to bring transparency in the system. 5 events, which are opportunity to inspect and adapt. 3 commitments, that brings focus, and 1 activity, which will help with the readiness of the requirements. Now, these are the 15 elements, 3 roles, which is product owner, scrum master, and developers. Then you're running a 3 artifacts, that is product backlog, sprint backlog, and increment. 5 events, sprint planning, daily scrum, sprint review, sprint retrospective. 3 commitments, product goal, sprint goal, and definition of done. And activity is product backlog defined. And then some rules are defined. Each event in Scrum is time boxed. It's a rule. Only product owner can cancel a sprint. It's a rule. A sprint can be cancelled only if the sprint goal is obsolete. It's a rule. Some guidelines are given. Scrum team size, which is product owner, developer plus Scrum master. The Scrum team size is 10 or fewer than 10. Daily Scrum happens at the same time, same location every day. Now, this governs some set of rules and guidelines within which your developers develop or use practices in order to deliver a value in the form of an increment. That is why Scrum is called as framework. Now, Agile doesn't give us any structure like that, but it helps us define a way of work to solve our business problem. That is why Agile equated as the methodology, but not as a framework. So this is about a very quick introduction on the history behind Agile and Scrum. I hope this helps. Okay, so now let's talk about 2 more terminologies. The one is project. The another one is product. Mostly I've seen it is actually being used interchangeably. But what is the difference between project and product? Now we'll go to the PMI, Project Management Institute, to understand what is the definition of a project. They very clearly mentioned that project is a temporary endeavor or initiative that has a specific start date and a specific end date, during which team work on a very defined scope or a goal within the allocated budget, and then they deliver something. So something this, and they deliver something. Now this delivery is equated as product. Now this could be tangible, the stuff that you can touch and feel, Like I'm having an Apple Pencil in my hand, I'm having an iPad, I'm having specs. All these are tangible products, or it could be intangible. Intangible like service, softwares, or maybe something more abstract. Now, if we'll talk about what is the definition of a product, then we can very well say that a product is something which is created, something which is produced. If I talk about a commercial product, it is being sold or marketed as a commodity. Why we are able to sell it? Because it delivers a value. Now, value to who? Product delivers value to the consumer or the user of the product. And at the same time, it also delivers the value to the creator or the producer of the product. Now, this is how we can actually define the project versus product. Now, if you look at the product side, I have not mentioned anywhere scope. And we'll talk about the project side, we have not mentioned anywhere value, which means project is always scope driven, wherein product is value driven. Now, when you work on the project and product, we often carry a mindset, the mindset which is value driven and the mindset which is scope driven. So when we are actually working in a scope driven mindset, we often carry a project thinking, or you can say project mindset, that talks about we have to deliver a defined scope within budget and within the timeline. And when we talk about value driven, then we talk about product mindset. That talks about how quickly we can deliver a value, or what is the value for my user as well as for my creator that can be delivered to both. Now, in Scrum, we talk about we always carry a product mindset, or a product owner carry a product mindset, but that doesn't mean the scope is not required. We do talk about scope in product development also, or in Scrum also. But how much scope can deliver a value? Is it like hundreds of features can deliver a value, or a minimal set of features can deliver a maximum value? Or do we need to wait for a long time to get a value delivery, or can we deliver a value iteratively? Now, that is where the difference comes. And that difference is defined using project and product mindset. Now, let's understand project versus product mindset. Now, in order to understand this, let's take a very hypothetical example. I'm sure all of you must have used Microsoft Word. Now, I asked you how many features are there in Microsoft Word. I'm sure it is almost impossible for anyone to tell us how many features are available in Microsoft Word. But if I ask what are the frequently used features of Microsoft Word, we all know. Why? Because those are the features which really deliver the value for us at a given point of time. Now consider that we, again, as I mentioned, it's a hypothetical scenario, and consider we are having a Microsoft Word which carries around 190 features, and consider that we are 2 to 3 decades back in our life where all the documents which were created or which were being created during that time were handwritten document, or the documents created using typewriter when the Microsoft Word or digital documentation was not there. Now consider during that time, Microsoft came up with an idea that, okay, yes, we should actually start to work towards, digitizing the document to ease people life. And consider they started working on that, what should be there in the product. And they were able, or they came up with a scope which was defined with 190 features. So Microsoft came with this idea. Now consider Microsoft has gone to a vendor for the product development, and they approached a company, let's say A. Now, in order for Microsoft to get the work done or the product delivered from A, they need to understand that how much time and money is needed to build this product with the scope of 190 features. So they've gone to company A and they requested their expertise. Company A picked up the scope, they started analyzing the scope, and after analyzing the scope, they understood that there's a certain set of expertise which is needed and certain set of developers required. And if these many developers are going to work on these 190 requirements, then it's going to take 10 months for them to build the product. And let's say it's going to cost them $500,000. Now with this data, they go to Microsoft. Microsoft went and spoke to their investors. Investors are ready to invest into the product, but they are interested in knowing that when the return on investment will start. And consider that Microsoft communicated to all the stakeholders whose money is at stake that the return will start to happen from after 10 months. And now they have come to vendor A and they have awarded the project to them, and they have written an SOW, contract, that company A is actually going to work on 190 requirements, and it's going to take 10 months for them to deliver it, and it's going to cost them $500,000, let's say. And Microsoft will not change the requirement during the 10 months. And should Microsoft choose to change the requirement, then it is going to be having a cascading impact on either time or budget. Now, consider company A got the project, they started working on that. Will it be possible for us to conclude at any given point of time that if Microsoft is not going to change the requirement, then this 190 requirement will stay as it is? It's very difficult for us to conclude that. Reason being, because when we start to work on any requirements, there could be a chances or a scenario where your requirements will start to evolve. Nobody's changing, but you started working on some scenarios and you have uncovered some more scenarios. There could be some technical challenges, there could be some technical blockage, because of which the scope start to evolve. And over a period of time, let's say the requirements got evolved and now 190 requirement became 250. Now the scope was 190, for which the timeline was given as 10 months. Now the scope started to evolve and now the timelines are becoming a challenge. Now consider vendor A has gone to Microsoft and they expressed their concern to Microsoft and they requested for extra 2 months of time. Now for Microsoft, it may be possible to give them a time or it might not be possible for them to give a time. Reason being, because once you will start to communicate the timelines to the stakeholder, it becomes increasingly difficult to convince the stakeholders every time on the timeline changes. So most of the time, we don't get this option. But then another option, let's add more people. But adding more people will shoot up the price. Now that's for sure. If you'll go to the vendor to ask for extra money, straight away, no. Reason being, because sometimes you're I would say the companies who are actually giving you the project, they are also tight on their schedule or on their, I would say, money part. So quite possible you might not get this option also. Another option is, let's go back to the previous scope, but scope never got changed. It got evolved, which means 190 requirements are still 190, but the scenarios are actually getting added up to that. So sometimes that is also not possible. And we often get into a situation where we are expected to complete all the 250 requirements within the timelines and within the budget. That's where the problem starts. And the problem starts because these people who are supposed to work for 8 hours a day, now they will be pushed to work for, let's say, 14 hours a day. Sometimes Saturday, Sunday office. I have worked in many products where I got into this kind of situation. Now, when people start to work extra, they usually get tired, not physically, but mentally. And in that state of mind, they often get into a mode which is more around finishing the scope. Now, maybe it's the right way of doing the work, or maybe it's not the right way of doing the work. It might They might go for a workarounds. It might create a problem for the later part of the product. But at that time, they're not worried about that. They're only worried about completing the scope. And knowingly, unknowingly, they end up compromising on quality. So this is what happens in a scope-based delivery, because completing a scope is the priority. Now consider team pulled it and they have completed all the 250 requirements within 10 months and within the budget, and consider they came up with the product also. So let me pick up this part. Okay. So consider the team pulled it, they completed all the 250 items, all the 250 requirements within 10 months and within the budget, and the product is created. Now, if I ask after 10 months, is there any guarantee that the product will be successful in the market? No, we cannot give a guarantee after 10 months, because 10 months is a very long time for any product to fail in the market. Maybe over a period of time, the requirements got evolved, maybe customer needs got changed, maybe quality became an issue, maybe market dynamics changed, or maybe somebody else introduced another solution for the similar kind of problem. Now, this mindset where completing a scope within time and budget takes the priority over the success of the product is called as project mindset. Scope-based mindset. Completing scope is a priority, not the success of the product. Now, this was the biggest challenge with the waterfall approach for the environment which was changing. So environment which was evolving. The environment which actually needed an adaptive approach rather a plan-driven. This is where the introduction of Agile or Scrum came into picture. I'm using the word Agile or Scrum interchangeably, but I hope you understand that, okay, this is where the need of the adaptive approach came, and Scrum became a solution for that. In Scrum, how it became a solution for this problem, let's understand this. Now, in the left-hand side, one thing was understood, that there are two elements, those are fixed, that is time and budget. We tried to fix the scope also, but it's not possible to fix the scope. So only two elements are there which can be fixed, time and budget. So Scrum took the same approach and they fixed the time and budget. And they kept the scope variable. Scope variable means your 190 requirements are allowed to grow. And let it grow. But how you'll fix the time and budget, that depends upon the environment that you're working on. Now, if at all you're working on a highly compliance-driven environment on a life-critical product, then this timeline may go in years also, which is more like that, okay, you can go with a plan-driven approach, because if the compliances are really high and the life-critical product, so the things doesn't change so frequently in that. But now consider an environment which is highly compliance-driven but not life-critical, for example, banking, insurance sectors. In those kind of environment, these timelines will be in quarters, like 1 quarter, 2, 3 quarters. But what if you're working in an environment which is risky? Risky means that you being disconnected from the market means you are actually going to lose the market share. Examples, e-commerce space, social media, or the software product development. In these kind of environment, you being disconnected from the market is actually a loss on the market share. Now, this is where you can see that how much risk an organization can take on the timeline. So consider we are actually having an organization that can take a risk of no more than a month. They say that, okay, within a month, we have to go to the market in order to retain our market share. For 1 month, we are actually having availability of developers. We know their per day cost. So we'll be able to come up with the budget also, let's say 50K. Now, which means within 1 month, within 50K, we have to deliver something to the market. Now, question comes, if we are working on the same product, which is Microsoft Word, in today's time, then how are you going to deliver it? Because delivering 190 requirement in 1 month is not possible until unless we are having a very big team and we are actually a huge amount of money. Maybe it's possible, but if at all we are working on an environment which is quite complex in nature and it needs an adaptive approach, then delivering 190 requirement in 1 month is a challenge. But now the question comes, if we have to deliver some requirements, then out of 190 requirement, which requirement we have to deliver first? So often we say that, okay, the items which are priority, items which are valuable. But now the question comes, how we know out of 190 requirement, which item is or which requirement is the priority or which actually going to deliver a value and to who? That is where we bring another angle to this, which is customer. Because we are building this product for end users, customers who are actually going to use this product. Now, it will be good for us to understand that what is actually a priority for my customer or my stakeholder or for my users of the product. Now, the question comes, does our customer know what exactly they want? Because if you go to our customer and you ask them that, okay, hey, we are actually going to work on a certain set of requirement out of 190 requirement to deliver a value in a month. So can you please help us understand which item are the priority or valuable to you? And customers often end up telling that, okay, all are priority and all are value. Because customers sometimes themselves doesn't know that what exactly they want. That is where our customer or user research comes into the picture. Now consider that we are having access to our potential customer and we have done some research around that. That's where we went and asked them that, okay, hey, help us understand that what challenges you are going through. What is the problem that you're facing right now? Trust me, customer knows their problems in priority. So instead of asking what they want, which they actually don't know, ask that what challenges they are going through. Now consider we happen to speak to a few customers and they mentioned that with the current document management, there's a lot of time waste. So if you understand that what is actually wasting the time, they can say that, okay, we write the document. Sometimes we have to edit the document. Editing often leads us to, rewrite the documents multiple times because multiple edits happen on the product or on the documents. So not every time we'll be able to, make a correction by striking it or by putting a white ink on that. So we end up creating the documents again and again, which is time. Then number of projects, number of documents, and number of files, storerooms. Sometimes searching the documents become a pain, time wastage. So after having understanding from our customer what actually is bothering them, which is time wastage, we know that, okay, if we are able to save the time, it will really help us deliver a value. So now we got to know what is the value for our customer. Now, in order to deliver that value, we can prioritize the requirement and then we can take a subset of this requirement to deliver a value. Now consider we have actually come up with a certain set of or priority items that can deliver this value. For example, create a digital document, word processing, save a digital document to a digital medium. It might deliver a quick value to my customers. So consider the team worked and they created a value for the customer. Initial one. So consider this is what the team has created for the customer. Now, when the team started to work on this particular requirements, they assumed that these requirements will deliver a value. But this assumption needs to be validated. And the best people to validate this assumption is customer themselves. So let's call them and do a quick review with your customer. Now, when you did a quick review with the customer, they were happy with the value they actually got. But one of the customer raised another concern that they say that, okay, if this is possible, then we are having another problem. Because once you start to see a product coming out, you will get a lot of ideas, or you may get, or you may figure out other problems that you are actually dealing with. So consider one of the customers gave a feedback that we are working on a project that needs our project manager to go on sites. They take a photograph and they come back, they print the photograph to negative, and then we staple that photograph with the A4 size sheet. And then we write the comment around that. And over a period of time, we have noticed that due to the moisture in the air, the photograph and paper stick together. And then when we are trying to separate it, we end up tearing up the page and we end up spoiling the photograph. Page we can rewrite. The content of the page we can rewrite, but searching that photograph in a pool of negative becomes a challenge and a time wastage. Can you do something about that? Now we got a feedback. This feedback helped us understand what is the next value for my customer. Now it's a time for us to adapt to this feedback. This adaptation may reprioritize a requirement, or we may add a few more items that can help deliver this value. It is allowed now. Why? Because our scope is allowed to grow at this time. Again, let's say in order to deliver this value, we took a subset from the requirements, and consider we got us requirements like option to add table and option to add digital images. Now again, team start to work on delivering this value, and team worked on this. So they worked for a month again to create this value. And they've created this value on top of previously delivered value, which means now you can create a Word document, or you can create a document. You can add table, you can add images, you can do an indentation, you can do a word processing, and then you can save a document. Now, again, this was assumed that this is going to deliver a value. For the validation, we'll call our customers again and another round of review with them. This may attract another feedback. This feedback help us understand what could be the next value for my customer. Again, we'll adapt to this feedback. This may reprioritize the requirement, or we may end up adding more features to the product. We took a subset, start to work on the next value for the customer over here, and then next value, and this value will be built on the previously delivered value, and this continues. Until how will continue? How long will continue? Till the time we are getting a feedback from the customer. Now, if we look on the way we deliver the value from the left hand side to the right hand side, quite a few things are there. First thing, in the right hand side picture, we are actually working towards delivering a value rather completing a scope. Every time we are referring to a value and rather completing the scope. Second thing, we are actually having a feedback loop. A shorter feedback loop, a quick value delivery, a quick adaptation. Now, this approach where value takes the priority over completing the scope, this thought process, this thinking is called as product thinking, or you can say product mindset. We also call this mindset as agile mindset, which is value driven mindset. And the shift from this way of work to this way of work is called as agile transformation. Often people say we are moving from projects to products. So it's not that there's a, we are shifting the projects to the product side, products now. No, it's more about the way we are actually thinking about the projects and the way we think about a product. That approach needs to be changed. Scope-based thinking to value-based. Now, this is what we call it as the difference between the project mindset and the product mindset. Or you can say waterfall way of working or Scrum or Agile way of working. This is also called as iterative and incremental product development. So we are doing a 1 month iteration. This is called as iterative approach. Another 1 month. Then another 1 month. Something like this. Correct? And incremental. So this is the increment. Increment. So iterative and incremental approach. One of the principle in Agile. So this is what we talk about the project versus product. Now, a lot of time people say that, okay, how about managing the budget? How about managing the scope? Till how long will we keep developing? See, we are talking about a product. Till the time we are delivering a value, the product stays. Project is a temporary initiative. Or you can also see that every iteration can be equated as a small project because it qualifies the definition of a project. But when we say that, okay, it can be treated as a project, we are doing a delivery with the project, but we are carrying a product mindset, which means the value is more important than completing a scope. Now, if at all we have to differentiate between project thinking and product thinking on a scale of, let's say, value, how we can differentiate? So consider this, a graph between the value and time. Let's say this side is value and this side is time. Now, when we talk about value, it's important for us to understand that value is for who. Here we say the value for a user as well as the value for a creator, because that's what the definition of product is. That there was a value to a user as well as to the creator. Now, value for user, let's say creator, we are talking about a commercial product. So the value for a creator is revenue. It's just a consideration. Now, we say, let's say we are actually working in a waterfall way. So in waterfall, we are having a steps, defined steps, wherein we actually go with the analysis first, then design, development, test, UAT, and then we go to the production. Now consider that we have spent a good amount of time or a month time on creating the documents. Now, after 1 month, we have actually created all the documentation that is needed for us to start on the project. So can we say the value is delivered to the customer as well as to the creator? No, we can't. Similarly, we worked on the design, development, test, UAT, no value is delivered. The value will actually get delivered only when you release the product. Now consider you made a release. This is the point when your customer will get a value. This is the point when your company will realize the value or a creator will realize the value. Now, at this time, if a feedback comes from the customer, it is very late for us to incorporate that feedback now. It often gets, accepted as a change request later, and then again you have to work on the scope, timelines, and budget. So we get a late feedback. On top of that, customer have to wait longer for the value. So which means late value delivery. Because the value was delivered late, so it often leads to the late value realization also. Now let's talk about the iterative approach, or let's say Scrum way of working. So what we do here? Here we work on a, solving a problem or a value, a very small value, I would say. And consider we have created a small value. Can it be released? Maybe it's not the right time, or it's not a full delivery, a full value delivery. Customer might not be able to use this product. So maybe we'll take a call not to release it. But what's the benefit? The benefit of this is early feedback. Now we'll work on that feedback and consider a point comes when we have created enough value for a customer that we can make a release of this now. So consider that we made our first release. Now with this release, customer gets a value. Same time, company also gets a value. So you can say this leads to early value delivery and same time early value realization. So now if we have to differentiate, see, project thought process or a waterfall often leads us with the late feedback, late value delivery, and late value realization. In contrast to this, Scrum helps us with the early feedback, early value delivery, and early value realization. Now, if we talk about a budget part over here, now consider the initial budget which was given to us was $500,000. We spent 50K over here, 50K over here, 50K over here, which means 150K. You're left with how much? 350K. But consider at this point, we realize the value, 30K. So now we are actually having a 380K as a budget. In order to realize this value, we often go for a quick releases, or not quick releases, I would say early releases or continuous releases. The right word could be continuous releases. So this helps us deal with the budget part also. Practically, yes, practically you might be having a different situation in your context. So it all depends on that. But if we are not giving a value quick, we'll not be able to realize the value also. So this is what introduction to our project versus product and a project mindset versus product mindset.